Welcome back, everyone. So, today we'll be discussing what India's 2026 budget really signals for the next decade and what kind of themes we see emerging from this budget. So, let's start off with why expectations for this budget are low. The thing is, previously, policymakers held off making new policies until the budget and they were less transparent about their policies. But nowadays, the government gives us clear directions of where they're headed and what kind of policies they'll be making, and that helps price in uh, what kind of budget will come, and then the market is not reacting as sharply as it did before, because in 2010 the Sensex increased or decreased by 1%, whereas in 2025 there's only a 0.1% change. But that doesn't mean that the budget doesn't matter anymore, because it does, because it can help influence which sectors lead for the year. So this article mentions that in 2025, because of the various policies, there was a rally in FMCG goods and automobile stocks. But at the same time, we saw there was a huge run up in defense stocks and railway stocks, and while there were policies that supported that, they fell in the next couple of months. So it's very important to understand where the opportunities lie from these themes that we're going to see. So these are the 9 themes that I identified for the budget. So let's just quickly go through each and every one of these, and then after that, I'll discuss what opportunities I see in which themes. So starting with defense, the world has been a very uncertain place, to say the least, with a lot of geopolitical conflict in the Middle East and in Europe, and that has led to a lot of countries increasing their defense budget, and that leads to a lot of other countries increasing their defense budget. And India, actually, for the past 5 years, has been consistently increasing their budget, and it has doubled since 2022. And now we want to export our military equipment to other countries like USA, France, and Armenia. And we'll see then there's a 12.4% increase over the previous year uh, in our budget allocation. And so there's an expected increase in budget. And I think a lot of other people also feel the same way about this. So a lot of movement in defense stocks might already be priced in. Um, so let's move on to the second theme, which is energy, nuclear, and the green transition. So this is actually one of my favorite themes, because this hasn't happened yet, right? Like, nuclear energy is not new, but we haven't used it a lot in terms of meeting energy targets. And so I think the government is now going to move towards modular nuclear reactors and do some partnerships with the private sector. And so they will encourage and amend some acts. So I'm definitely expecting something about nuclear energy in this budget. If we talk about green hydrogen and energy storage and BESS, which is a battery electricity storage system, these are basically just batteries which can store electricity from solar panels or windmills, and then deploy them whenever needed to the grid. And this is kind of the future direction in which companies are going, because I recently did a video on Adani Green Energy, and this is what they're also focusing on for the future. And so I think the government will kind of support this, because this is also very closely linked to the need for electricity and around the clock electricity, actually, and then that will basically power a lot of technological stuff like data centers as well. And obviously solar energy has been a key theme in the past and will continue to do so in the future. Now let's talk about manufacturing. So manufacturing is, you know in the last budget as well, there was a lot of uh, schemes to help manufacturing, and recently there's been a fall in a lot of manufacturing stocks due to the tariffs. So if we focus on particularly where I see manufacturing doing well, it's electric vehicles and their components, because previously what was happening was the components of electric vehicles were taxed higher than if you import an electric vehicle itself. So now I think the government will change that structure. Will change the custom duty on that, because the finance minister herself, she mentioned that in this budget there will be some overhaul of custom duties, as there has been in the past. So definitely this would be a sector to watch out for. And the other thing is there's a 23,000 crore incentive war chest. So India wants to reduce its reliance on imports from countries like China, Japan, and South Korea. And so it's going to have a fund to earmarked for production of heavy machinery such as tunnel boring machines and cranes. And I can only assume this is for something to do with mining rare earth metals. I feel like that is also a key part of where the world is headed, because everybody wants to be very independent given how much disruption there is in global supply chains. And so, I think this is the kind of investment that we're making in infrastructure here. And again, advanced automotive technology focused on 360-degree cameras, sensors, and driver assistance systems. So for some reason, the government is very focused on automotive technology. I think they feel that India can be a big market for it. And I read in the newspaper as well, they want to introduce P2P, which is peer-to-peer communication in cars. So basically, your car can communicate with my car, and it can prevent an accident. So yeah, definitely, I think India is looking at some extremely interesting technology that they can implement here. And the next is infrastructure diversification. So previously, in last year, the government was focused on traditional sectors like roads and railways, but now I think they're going to shift and pivot into um, you know firepower into urban redevelopment, science, technology, as well as the maritime sector. So from this, I think the urban challenge fund that hasn't gone ahead as planned. It was introduced last year, but there was some issue with that, so that hasn't been deployed. But you can see here that they want to increase the construction of affordable housing units, right? And this will help with you know the sectors that are related to housing. So, for example, housing finance. Recently, I did a video on Aadhaar housing finance, so you can go check that out as well. And also for cement and steel sectors. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then science, technology, and digital infrastructure, I think, is one of the main key things that is going to see growth, because they say that they expect growth of 300 times compared to FY25. And this includes policies to build out digital infrastructure like data centers, fiber networks, and towers. So obviously, yeah, data centers, and I mean, this is like some pretty important stuff that's going to happen in the future. So it only makes sense that they're going to make policies related to this in the budget. And the government is going to expecting them to allocate 20,000 crores to implement private sector driven research, development, and innovation initiatives. Uh, so yeah, I mean, this includes AI, but we talk about AI next. Before that, there's maritime. So they plan on long-term financing of coastal projects as well as shipbuilding. I think in the last year budget as well there was shipbuilding, but in terms of where we are as a country for shipbuilding, we're behind the US, we're behind China, and those countries are way more advanced than us. So there are policies that are still needed on shipbuilding. So now let's talk about AI. There's a huge buzz around AI, and while India doesn't exactly manufacture GPUs, we do design them, and the government plans to deploy 10,000 GPUs for startups and researchers. So, and they also plan on funding their own government-funded LLM. So I think they're promoting people to use AI to create things, which is actually good. And at the same time, they're expecting there to be a subsidy for AI startups and local cloud providers. But eventually, I think they will have to move towards manufacturing, right? Because every country goes through the same kind of phases where you move up the value chain, and so we will have to move towards that at some point. But right now, we're focusing more on educating people about AI, right? We're introducing AI into agriculture, health, and education. And also, there are a lot of incentives that will be provided for deep tech AI startups that encourage research and development or anticipated duty waivers. And there is a fund for that. And we want to eventually become an AI exporter. I'm not sure whether that is through models or that is through chips, but right, I think currently it's through the models and through products that we make using AI. Now let's talk a bit more about custom duties. We already discussed some custom duties about EVs and renewable energy. Uh, but what I wanted to focus here was on the ease of doing business. So India is kind of, making it smoother to do business by reforming a lot of these custom duties, and reducing the regulatory uncertainty and making practices uniform across, ports. And so this will definitely help boost business. And another thing to mention, we covered EVs and renewable energy. So let's talk about precious metals. Unfortunately, there's no clear answer to what will happen to the duty of precious metals. There was recently a huge rally in precious metals, and then they fell by quite a lot. Uh, but yeah, this will definitely affect how they react. So should watch out for the kind of duty that will be implemented on them. The seventh theme is MSMEs and the ease of doing business. So I think the government wants to focus on creating a lot of jobs and promoting businesses. So they have a lot of growth capital, 10,000 crores for the startups, which they call the fund of funds, and they are actually increasing the credit and liquidity into the market so that people will actually innovate, and there'll be increased research and development. And they also like increasing the trust in the governance because they're reducing the legal provisions, um, like decriminalizing them, right? Like if you previously went for jail if you made some technical error, they're kind of removing that. So that will obviously encourage more and more people to get into this space, which is good. And then eventually they want to increase a lot of businesses uh, to and promote them to make all their products in India and then export them. Now let's talk about a bit about agriculture. Um, Agriculture actually hasn't been doing well in the last 2 years, I think. But the government is planning on using digital technologies to kind of help farmers get insurance and loans, um, as well as you know regulating the seed market, doing climate smart farming, and yeah, they're integrating, as I mentioned, they're integrating AI into everything, right? So AI track cold storage to cut post harvest losses. And so they're just helping farmers in various ways here. But yeah, the only I did cover a stock called Pie Industries, which makes chemicals, so that is related to agriculture. But it is not clear how it will play out in the budget because they want to reduce chemical fertilizers, but Pie Industries makes chemical fertilizers that reduces uh, the effect of climate change on crops. So not sure, but let's see how that plays out. And ninth is housing and tourism. As I mentioned before, they're shifting from railways and roads to uh, basically setting up affordable housing. And obviously tourism and hospitality has been a theme in the past, but they want the foreign reserves, so they're going to promote people to come into India, and either for leisure or for medical tourism, because it's less expensive to get treated in India than other countries. And so let's quickly discuss what opportunities I see after seeing what kind of themes there are. So for high value manufacturing and import substitution, definitely we discussed that they are making a lot of advanced auto components. So companies that create these components or the software for those components, like KPIT Technologies, will definitely benefit from any policy that is going to give orders for this. And then if we talk about infrastructure, companies in data centers, fiber networks, and towers, uh, they will also benefit, as well as science and technology related companies. But the thing about this is, it is still not like there will be a mixed kind of effect on them, because if you remember, the tariffs have been implemented on a lot of these companies that export to the US, so their earnings have been hit as well. So it's unsure how things will resolve moving forward. Hopefully there's a reduction in tariffs in the future and these companies do well, but it's hard to say. when that will happen. And yeah, we discussed the housing sector as well, and how that will benefit the cement and steel stocks as well as affordable housing stocks like Aadhaar Housing Finance. And we discussed the energy transition, nuclear energy stocks that supply component for the production of nuclear energy, or companies that will produce nuclear energy themselves, as well as companies that will produce green hydrogen will get benefits. So yeah, I just wanted to do a quick overview of what I thought the budget would include, which themes and what themes would be there going into the future, irrespective of the budget actually. Uh, but yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see the budget tomorrow and understand which companies and which sectors will benefit. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.